Welcome to a wonderful bedtime story. Tonight, we will follow the adventure of a little rabbit who discovers the joy of friendship. The forest was quiet, and the sun was shining softly through the trees. A little rabbit was hopping happily, exploring the world around him. He loved jumping over small rocks and running through the soft grass. But sometimes he felt lonely. He wished he had a friend to play with. One morning, the little rabbit heard a tiny sound coming from a big tree. He stopped and looked up, curious about what it could be. A small squirrel was peeking from a branch, watching him. The rabbit had never seen the squirrel before. He wondered if the squirrel wanted to play. The rabbit stepped closer to the tree and twitched his nose. The squirrel didn't run away but stayed on the branch, looking at him. The rabbit felt happy because most animals ran when they saw him. He waited for a moment, hoping the squirrel would come down. The forest was quiet and the air smelled fresh. The squirrel finally climbed down the tree, landing softly on the grass. The rabbit jumped a little, excited to have company. He kicked a small pine cone toward the squirrel, hoping it would understand the game. The squirrel picked it up and rolled it back. The rabbit's ears twitched with joy. The little rabbit and the squirrel ran around, chasing each other through the trees. They took turns jumping over small rocks and rolling pine cones. The rabbit had never had this much fun before. The squirrel was fast, but the rabbit was faster. The forest was filled with their happy little sounds. After a while, the rabbit jumped too high and landed in a bush. The leaves rustled loudly, and he got stuck for a moment. The squirrel stopped playing and ran closer. The rabbit tried to move but felt a little scared. He needed help to get out. The squirrel looked at the rabbit and quickly grabbed a thin branch. It pulled the branch to the side, making space for the rabbit. The little rabbit wiggled his nose and pushed himself free. He shook his fur, feeling happy again. The squirrel had helped him, and that made him feel even closer to his new friend. As they continued playing, the rabbit noticed something shining under a bush. He hopped closer and saw a tiny blue feather lying on the ground. It was soft and sparkled under the sunlight. He had never seen a feather like this before. The squirrel came closer, just as curious. The rabbit gently picked up the feather with his teeth and placed it near the squirrel. The squirrel sniffed it and tapped it with its tiny paw. It looked at the rabbit and picked up a small acorn from the ground. The squirrel placed the acorn near the rabbit as if giving a gift in return. The rabbit's heart felt warm. Dark clouds started to cover the sky, and the wind became stronger. The little rabbit looked up, knowing that rain was coming. The squirrel seemed to notice it too. A drop of water fell on the rabbit's nose, making him blink. They needed to find shelter before the rain started. The squirrel quickly ran up the tree and pointed its tiny paw toward a small hole. The rabbit understood and hopped toward it. The hole was just big enough for both of them to hide. As the rain started to fall, they curled up inside, warm and safe. The sound of raindrops filled the air. Inside the tree hole, the rabbit and the squirrel listened to the rain. It was falling heavily, but they didn't feel scared. The rabbit wiggled his nose and looked at the squirrel. They had only met that morning, but he already felt like they had been friends forever. The rain made the forest feel fresh and new. As the rain continued, the rabbit felt warm and sleepy. The little space inside the tree felt cozy. The squirrel curled up next to him, its tiny tail touching his fur. The rabbit closed his eyes for a moment. Everything felt peaceful. After some time, the sound of rain became softer. The rabbit opened his eyes and stretched his legs. The squirrel peeked outside, and a ray of sunlight touched its fur. The storm had passed, and the forest smelled fresh. It was time to go outside again. The rabbit and the squirrel hopped out of their little shelter. Everything was wet, and tiny water droplets sparkled on the leaves. The grass felt soft under the rabbit's paws. He shook his fur and felt a happy energy inside him. The world felt even more beautiful after the rain. As they walked, they found a big puddle in the middle of the path. The water was clear, and the sky's reflection could be seen inside it. The squirrel touched the water with its tiny paw, making small ripples. The rabbit jumped forward, making a splash. Water droplets flew everywhere, and they both started laughing. The little rabbit's stomach started to make a small noise. He was hungry after all the playing. The squirrel climbed up a tree and quickly returned with a nut. The rabbit found some soft grass nearby and started munching. They both enjoyed their little meal together. The rabbit and the squirrel lay down under a tree, looking up at the sky. The clouds were moving slowly, making different shapes. The rabbit imagined flying through the clouds like a bird. The squirrel pointed to a tall hill in the distance. A new adventure was waiting for them. They decided to climb the hill together. The rabbit hopped ahead, feeling excited. The squirrel was smaller, but it climbed quickly using the rocks and branches. The wind felt stronger as they reached higher. When they finally reached the top, they looked around in amazement. The view from the top of the hill was magical. The whole forest stretched out before them, green and endless. The sun was setting, painting the sky with orange and pink colors. The little rabbit had never seen anything so beautiful. He felt grateful to share this moment with his new friend.
Learn English with Fairy Tales, the perfect book for kids and beginners. Inside, you'll find engaging, educational stories that are perfect for building grammar, vocabulary, and reading skills. Whether you're just starting or advancing, this book will guide you through exercises that make learning fun. You can access Learn English with Fairy Tales anytime, anywhere on your phone. Available now on Amazon Kindle. Check the link in the description to start your English learning journey today.
As the sun went down, the rabbit and the squirrel sat side by side. They had spent the whole day together, from morning until night. The rabbit felt warm inside, knowing that he had found a true friend. The forest was big, but it didn't feel lonely anymore. From that day on, they promised to play together every day. The stars twinkled in the sky as the rabbit and the squirrel made their way back home. The little rabbit had started the day alone, but now he had a best friend. The forest felt different, warmer, and happier. Every new day would bring more adventures, and with a friend by his side, he was ready for them all. And that's the end of our story. The little rabbit's day started alone, but it ended with a wonderful friendship. Sometimes the best adventures begin when we meet someone new. Sleep well and dream of happy adventures. Good night.